Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor put up illegal no trespassing signs on my own property and threatened to sue me." I'm gonna be honest, I really thought this was not going to be eventful enough at first to even be a story. I thought it would have just been something funny I could tell people about how stupid my neighbor was. I know that a lot of these stories where their neighbor is a total jerk, people already have beef with them. Unfortunately, that is not the case here due to two major facts. One of which is that we have big houses and live in sort of a rural area with a lot of forest, so it is not like we are living right on top of each other like in a city. The other thing being that we are all just pretty private people, and while everyone can recognize the neighbors, we don't really interact much with them. Some people we are friends with around us seem to intentionally avoid a specific neighbor though that lives fairly close to us, so we do the same without really being told much about him. All I know is that he is a hunter and spends a lot of time away from his house and in the woods. That is fine by us because as far as anyone can tell, he is hunting legally and not putting anyone in danger. I would have been totally happy if we were just able to live our two separate lives and never have to interact with each other. Unfortunately, one day that all seemed to go out the window when I saw a no trespassing sign on my own lawn. I know for a fact that neither me nor my wife had put that there, so I went to take a closer look. The sign said, "No trespassing, property of neighbor." I know that this part of the land though is mine, even though it is a little bit of a distance from both of our actual houses. Still, maybe he accidentally put it in the wrong spot. I went to his house to return it and tell him, but he was not there, so I left it on his porch with a note. I thought that that was the end of it and he was going to realize his mistake and move the sign accordingly. Instead, I was woken up at 2 AM by the furious knocking on my door and my wife in a complete panic of not knowing what was going on. I ran downstairs with a bat. Late night visitors are not a common occurrence here, and I wanted to be ready. I look through the peephole though and see that it is just neighbor and put the bat down and open the door. "Neighbor, what the hell is with this note you left me? You go on my property and take away my sign. You just think you can do anything you please?" He is yelling and adding in some colorful language that I'm just going to omit so you can use your imagination. Me? I told you in the note that I took it down because it was on my property. You still have the sign, so you can just put it in the right spot. Calm down. That was the day I learned telling someone who was irrationally angry to calm down was a really bad move. "Neighbor, don't you dare be telling me to calm down when you pull this on me. I'm going to give you one warning and tomorrow my sign is going back up onto my property. And if I catch you stepping foot on my property, I'm going to sue you and have you arrested for trespassing, because I clearly had a no trespassing sign." At this point I was tired and a little scared about his behavior. I managed to tell him that I was going to sleep and other excuses that seemed to appeal to him enough that I was able to shut my door and get back to bed. That night though, I really could not sleep because I was so annoyed at what he said and knew that I was going to wake up to that sign being back on my property. And sure, if he sued me and the property was found to be mine, I would not get into any trouble. I am busy though, and I think of worst case scenarios like if I was wrong or told wrong about where the property lines were. The next morning when I saw the sign again, I went back into my house and called for someone from the town to come and evaluate the property line. A day later he came out and confirmed that his sign for no trespassing was indeed on my property. Now I knew for sure that I could not get sued for being on my own land, and it was time to put some revenge into action. When you live in a rural area, you can be sure of two things. You are having some extra time on your hands, and your hunting fanatic neighbor being all but invisible during the peak of hunting season. So, when he was gone, I constructed a fence and on it I put my own no trespassing sign with cameras. Also, I did not return his sign this time because he had his chance and I just threw it out. I also had asked the town to please send the map of where the property line was to the neighbor. You would think when he got back he would realize that he lost, but where would the fun of revenge be if that was the case? Besides, it took a lot of time putting up that fence and cameras. As you can probably guess, he was not happy to see his sign gone and replaced with another one and a fence. I had him pounding at my door once again, this time at a much more reasonable hour though. "Neighbor, what did I tell you about trespassing on my property? I swear I'm going to sue you and take everything you have." Me, look in your mailbox. It's the official town record of where the land divisions are. You can clearly see that the land is my property. You can go ahead and try to sue me for trespassing on my own land, but we both know that you are not going to get that far. Neighbor, we will see about that. He left and I accidentally forgot to mention that I had cameras watching every inch of my property now. It only took a couple hours until night fell for him to go out there with bolt cutters, cut a hole in my fence for him to walk through and destroy my sign. Then he put up another one with his name on it up in its place. Like I said before, I did not want to deal with going to court, so I told him that I had the tape of his trespassing and destroying my property. If he paid me for it and stayed off my land, I was not going to sue him. He did not agree with that solution, and I had to now sue him or he would never leave me alone. Court was actually easier than I thought it would be because I did not even need to refute any of the lies he was going to come up with, simply because he did not show up because he felt going hunting again was more important. So in the end, he lost and had to pay me. Also apparently, destroying a fence is serious here and he was going to jail for 30 days. So yeah, Ripe Stars, I'm not exactly sure if this story took place in the United States or elsewhere, but I'm pretty sure it did not take place in the US, but apparently there you can get 30 days of jail time for destruction of property and trespassing, which in my opinion is not really a bad thing, because that would teach all the entitled people and Karens a lesson that feel like trespassing is their God-given right. Anyway, if you enjoyed the stories about crazy neighbors, then please don't forget to like the video, because that would help my channel tremendously. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled, "Coworker messed with us, I messed with him." So, I like to bring my own food into the office and we have a fridge to put things into. I have my food in tubs with my name on them. A coworker would sometimes not see people's names on food and think it was theirs, so they would heat it up and eat it and then apologize. They did this enough for it to be an annoyance, but not enough for our employers to really care. This has been happening with my food for once or twice a month. Last month I had enough and I like spicy food, but don't bring it into the office as sometimes I will let people try some of my food and my cooking. I ordered a bag of ghost chili peppers and put the full bag into a big pot of chili that would last for several days. I took this into the office and had it for lunch every day. Midweek my lunch went missing and I was waiting for the person who was stealing my lunch getting a shock when they ate my lunch. What happened in reality was that someone got sent home sick and the next day they were off and I was told they went to the doctors for stomach pains. 2 weeks went by and the coworker who was off refused to talk about it and said that HR was involved, so I knew they were going to try to get me fired. I went home and ordered another bag of ghost chilies and made another batch of my chili, this time with only one chili in a single tub. I put this in the freezer and the following Monday I was told I had an HR meeting that day. I refused and said that they need to give me 24 hours to find someone to come into the meeting with me, and the next day I had my manager come into the meeting and brought in my now heated ghost chili infused chili. The long and short is I was told I could be fired for trying to poison the person who was stealing my lunch, and I asked if they admitted to stealing people's lunch, which they did. I then said I have a batch of the chili in question with me and that I just like spicy food. Me liking spicy food should not stop me from having it at work since it does not smell when heated, like fish, and my manager agreed it was the person who took my lunch without knowing how spicy it was, and I should not be held liable if they eat something of someone else's that doesn't agree with them. My manager and I then ate some of the chili and offered it to the other people in the meeting, some of which tried it and agreed while it was spicy, it was clearly what I liked as I was fine eating it. The meeting ended and nothing happened. I was not taken into another meeting and my lunch was not taken anymore, but the person who had stolen our lunch got a slap on the wrist and was allowed to stay at work. Lunches started to go missing again, so my manager went to HR to say that lunches were going missing and he knew who was taking it and had proof this time, and when they asked for the proof he presented the meeting record with the line highlighted where they admitted they had stolen lunch and the line where HR had said this was not what the meeting was about. They were fired the next day for theft of property and told they would not be given a reference. And wow, Ripe Stars, I gotta say that ending was a little bit unexpected, but definitely appreciated. No matter what, you should not steal other people's property, even if the property is spicy chili. However guys, I'm curious, are you capable of eating spicy food? Or do you enjoy spicy food? Obviously, since I live in Thailand, I really enjoy spicy food and I have no issues eating it. However, I gotta say what I don't really enjoy so much are things like spicy chips, which does not really fit together that well for me in my opinion, but I know that it is very popular in America. So therefore, let me know in the comments what is your favorite spicy food. The next one is titled Rude Customer Revenge. Some background: I worked at a company that primarily supports hotel Wi-Fi and taking calls from guests needing help connecting is part of that. Part of my job at the time of this happening was being an escalation point for unresolved guest problems. One time, roughly 2 years ago, there was some huge hurricane going through Florida, so a lot of our hotels in Alabama and northern Florida were packed with people evacuating their homes. Most people staying at these hotels were bringing most of their possessions as well. Anyways, I got a message from the guest support team asking me to take a call from one of these guests from Florida so I could help them connect the dozen or so devices they had to the Wi-Fi. For some reason they were refusing to connect and Tier 1 support could not resolve it. I start talking to the guy and he is immediately hostile towards me and gave the whole "I know what I'm doing, I'm tech savvy" shtick. I shrugged it off and after about 30 minutes I was able to get every single one of his devices connected. After that he was still incredibly pissed off and started ranting about how incompetent the employees he had been previously talking to were and being upset at me that I took so long to get his stuff connected too. I forgot most of the profanity he was spewing at me, but I will never forget him saying, "Your attacks are worthless, you should hang them from their intestines." At this point I should have just hung up on him, but I froze up a little and let him continue. He ended up insisting that I help him set up his Plex server, which is against the hotel's TOS, since he could potentially be using it to stream movies illegally. I finally got my manager involved and we called the GM of the hotel and brought her up to speed while the guest was on hold. I got her conferenced into the call and immediately she began chewing him out and telling him he cannot talk to their support staff this way and that we had other more considerate guests to be assisting. He tried defending himself, telling her how long we took, but she was not having it and told him he had 2 hours to get all of his belongings and leave or she would call the police. I'm not sure why she let me stay on the call for this long, but this guy begged her to let him stay since he had just finished lugging everything he owned into his room and every other hotel around was booked. She did not budge, however, and after scolding the guy some more, she told me I could disconnect. Never in my life had I seen justice delivered so swiftly. This is the story I always tell people when talking about crazy support calls. Please remember this the next time you consider blowing up at tech support staff. And guys, we usually say you never mess with Marines or in general military people, old people, because they always have good revenge ideas, but on the other hand I would also say you should never mess with tech support, especially if you need their help. The next one is titled Lazy People Are the Worst. A bit of backstory: this was during my time I was working in retail. Every day my department would get pallets of merchandise that needed to be stocked, usually after my coworkers and I would leave for the day just before closing. I would work closing one week, opening shift the following week, weekends off. During that time we would have several groups of overnight co-workers assigned to different departments to stock merchandise brought in on the delivery trucks and then put any overstock in the back, clean up the cardboard boxes. The opening shift would take care of any overstock pallets the overnights did not have time to get to. Every week each group of overnight employees would be rotated to different departments. Unfortunately, there was one group of overnight employees that had a bit of a reputation for being lazy, and those guys were assigned to my department for the week. At the time when this happened, I was working my opening shift years before COVID. The wrongs being done during the week was not so much being done to just me, it was being done to my other co-workers in my entire department. So this was pretty much a group effort. So now on with the story. My co-workers and I get to our department to find 4 pallets of merchandise, saran wrapped, labeled as overstock. We double check the pallets and the shelves and find out that it needed to be worked. We were pissed. By that time the department manager and supervisor found out and they were absolutely livid. So we ended up working the merchandise, putting them on the shelves. I was getting ready to start breaking down the boxes when I got this wicked idea. My idea was to stack all of the empty boxes like they were full, wrap them up and label them as overstock, but I wanted to get the approval from my supervisor first. When I talked to my supervisor, I mentioned what I wanted to do. My supervisor chuckled at the idea, approved it and explained what had happened to him last year. Apparently, a year before, the overnight employees played a prank on him on April 1st. They had left 2 pallets of merchandise wrapped up and labeled as overstock. He said he double-checked only to find out that all of the boxes on the pallets were empty. He gathered all of us in the department, explained what we were doing, and we got to work. The supervisor explained that if it should happen again, we should inform him, work the merchandise and restock the empty boxes as if they are full, wrap them, label them as overstock and leave the pallets for the overnighters. Unfortunately, my opening co-workers and I were done for the day. We were at 2 pallets. Fortunately, our closing co-workers were there when the supervisor explained what we wanted done. The next day we walk in, more pallets of overstock merchandise. Supervisor was informed, basically rinse and repeat for the rest of the week. The last day of the week, however, we walk in. To our surprise, there was only 1 pallet. It had 7 pallets stacked on top of it with a handwritten "Go F yourselves" label on it. We informed the supervisor. He informed us that the overnight group assigned to our department were terminated by the store manager. And ripe stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support and I hope to see you again tomorrow.